So we are waiting few minutes and see if more participants will be joining. I think in the next 2 minutes, if let's see those that are able to join, so that we proceed from there because it's very, very important. Okay, so we'll start right away. So once again, I'm Senu Ebenezer, Research and Teaching Assistant from the Department of Molecular Medicine, School of Medicine and Institute of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, and also a medical laboratory scientist by profession. I love research. Everywhere research is, I'm also there. So tonight or this evening, or depending on wherever we are. So today's section is going to be on a very important aspect of our research journey, concerned about literature review and search strategies. So we are going to have our MD, Adriana Miranda. So he's a very wonderful person that I just met a while ago, and I'm hoping to stay in touch with her. So Adriana is currently a final year medical student at the University of Indonesia. So she strives towards the research interest arrive toward transfer. Mostly what she's into it, or let me start from the basis. So she strives to translate her passion for global health, medicine, research and information technology to improve healthcare systems across the world. She is currently serving as the Deputy Director for Research and Program Lead for Women in Global Research of Global Health Focus. So I also happen to join Global Health Focus program that was just held last year in Ghana at our campus. So I'm more familiar with Global Health Focus. So she is from the Asia chapter. She is also a member of the Youth Editorial Board of Public Health Challenges, a Wally Journal. Just this weekend, I submitted a paper to Wally Journal. So I'm happy to see someone also working in Wally Journal. She has published in BMC and American Journal of Tropical Hygiene and Medicine, and among others. So driven by her passion to help the medical community and empower youth during the pandemic, she co-founded a global grassroots movement called Students Against COVID in 2020. Now a movement in about 110 plus countries, and also won what award awards on this. So we're very happy to see such a great person being delivered to us today on literature review and search strategies. Me myself, I'm very happy to witness this wonderful presentation. So I think we can proceed with, and I'm sure alongside participants, more will be joining us. So I don't know, Miss Adriana, I don't know if with most respect, I think you can, if you can hear me, Miss Adriana, can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible. Thank you for the very
Yes.
kind introduction about me.
Yes. Okay, so I think, yes, you can take the platform now as I also see what goes on. Yes, I think we are good to go now.
Okay, let me share my screen. Oh, I cannot share my screen at the moment. Could you please give me like the permission?
Yes, you can share your screen.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes, sure. I think you can see from my end.
Okay, then. So first of all, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm especially glad to meet you, albeit virtually, Ebenezer. It's always fun to meet another GHF graduate from the other side of the world. So
Yes.
um, so just I will start with my presentation. So what I'm going to present is about the Literature Review 101. It's the why and how. So I would like to begin my presentation with asking like why research. I think everyone here must have different reasons on why they joined this event. So if you could please write in the chat box about why are you interested in research, and do you know anything about literature review? So if you can write in the chat box, that would be great. At the same time, I will continue with my own reason. So I believe that there are two main reasons why you should do research. I think this may perhaps have been covered a bit by the like last week's presentations, but I will give you a bit of my perspective into it. So firstly, of course, it's for personal development. So these are some of the events that have been held by GHF. It's a research training, just like the one Venezer has attended last year, I think. So by joining research, you can meet other people, you can learn skills to write, to um, well, to collect data, etc. So there are a lot of skills, new skills that you can learn from research. Um, yeah, and I think there's some Tochuku here. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but I think your answer really summarizes things greatly. So it's to discuss things and let the world knows about it, and also to discover. And yeah, so that is what I would like to say with this next slide. So I believe that research is also an advocacy tool, and it's a very important advocacy tool at that. So if you can see at the right side of the screen, there's this picture of mask. And if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, masking should used to not be compulsory. But then there's a research that shows that wearing a mask significantly reduce your chance of getting coronavirus infection. And so after that, mask is mandatory throughout the world. So it's a very um, efficient advocacy tool because research gives you the numbers. Research gives you evidence-based data that can be used to support policy and another programs that can impact the whole community. So yeah, there are a lot of impact of research. And I also see here Oluwatimi Henin. I'm sorry once again if I mispronounce it, but yeah, I also agree with you that it is very important to go through a lot of literature related to our research interest because, well, firstly, of course, it's for our personal development. And at the same time, if we like a topic, of course, we can advocate it better because, well, we are perhaps more well versed in it. And since we're more interested in it, we can read more literature. Yeah, and we can help to make the world better, basically. And in order to start your research journey, that is actually the first step. And the first step is always the hardest. So if you already know your interests, congratulations. Based on my experience, it's actually one of the hardest steps. And well, aside of that, of course, the motivation should be the first two I mentioned. It's about personal development as well as advocacy for a better world. And after you find that motivation and which topic you are interested in, then you can just start writing because, well, after all, we need to start somewhere, and to just write is always the best way because that way we can know our current writing ability, our ability in collating data and analyzing it, and we can improve over time if we continue writing. But of course, it will be a lot better if we can join a community, so such as GHF, the community I am in, because there we can meet mentors and other researchers. And I think Thorasif is also having a research community. You can also join that. Basically, any community you are comfortable with and where you can learn more about research with your friends and also your mentors. So with that, without further ado, I would like to start on the more technical part about literature review. So have you ever written a literature review before? So if any of you have written one before, please write in the chat box. And if you know like the definitions, you can also please write in the chat box. Okay, I think there are some questions in the chat box as well. I think I will refer to it by the end of the presentation. I see some answers here that, well, some of the participants here have yet to know about literature review. And that's okay. I will then proceed to the next slide. So literature review. So it's basically a summary, analysis, and synthesis of scientific literature on a particular topic. So if you see in journals, or if you just look for topics in Google, for example, you may find some articles with titles such as, well, a topic in it, and then a literature review or a systematic review. So this is what it meant by literature review. You can also find literature review in a proposal, like a research proposal. It's usually in the second part of it. So after introduction, there's usually a literature review that explains more in depth about the current, about the topic and the current situation of it. So basically what literature reviews do is that it builds a topic, it builds a picture of what is known about a topic and what questions remain unanswered. So for example, if you're writing a literature review about the COVID-19 disruption to healthcare services in Africa, then the literature review will firstly be about the general overview of COVID-19 in Africa, and then it also summarizes the current services that has been disrupted by COVID-19. And at the same time, it will also explain about the impact of it, like what does the disruption to health services have done to the condition of health system and the healthcare status of the Africans, something like that. And literature review can be a standalone article, like I mentioned before. So it can be a complete, a complete article of publication, And it really has an advantage because, well, other types of research article would need you to do to find data first, to do surveys, for example. But in literature review, what you need to do is to gather data from second sources, like searching through PubMed or Google, where you can then summarize journal articles you find on the internet and critically analyze it. So basically, if I need to sum up literature review in one sentence, it will be a summarize of original research articles that you find in the internet. And the reasons why literature review is very important is because, well, every day there are thousands of research that is published in PubMed and Google and other search databases. And it's impossible for researchers to keep up with all of them. So with a summary in it, if we make a summary about a topic which has thousands of articles published every day, it will help the researchers understand better about the topic without having to read through all of that research articles. So yeah, well, if it's like a novel, or if it's like, if it's like a book or a fiction book, you can imagine it as like a summary of the book that people want to read, just in case they're wondering whether to read the book or not, something like that. So literature review is like an overview on what's happening in the world, and if the researcher is interested to learn more about it, then they can dig deeper into the references, something like that. And in the proposal or in an original research article, you can also have a literature review that is usually more to show that the topic you're researching is important. So there you need to write about, well, you need to justify your idea by giving data as well. And usually that's how you get funding as well. Yeah, and so hopefully after the definition of literature review becomes clear, the next step is to write a literature review. So I hope the definition was clear. If it's not, please feel free to chat in the chat box so I can clarify it. So the most important step before this is, of course, to understand what literature review is and what needs to be in the article. And after that, you can go to the next steps. The first one is to define the topic. And then you need to choose the type of review because there are some types of it. And then the next part is to search your data, because literature review summarize literature. So what you need to do to gather data is to search the literature. And then the next step you need to do is to, of course, summarize the data you got from the literature through critical appraisal and data extraction. And lastly, it's just start writing. And the first step is defining a topic. So with every research, we want people to read it, but at the same time, it needs to be interesting to us as well. So in defining a topic, there are 3 things that you need to consider. The first thing is that it needs to be interesting to you. And then the second one is that it needs to be an important aspect of the field, because once again, we want people to read it. And lastly, it's a well-defined issue. So by well-defined, it needs not to be too broad, but at the same time, it should not be too specific either. I will show you the example in the next slide. So for the tip, for defining a topic is that you can find a hot topic in your research area. So you can find this by, for example, looking in Google. For example, if my interest is in infectious diseases, then I can perhaps search about infectious diseases journal, and then I can take a look at the journals and see their recent articles. So they usually have this section called recent articles. And in that recent articles, I can just look for topics that are, there. It's usually hot topic in there. And then I can compare that to my interest. And if that interests me, I usually make that like a potential topic to write. Another way to search for topics is to go to the WHO's website. So if you see here, they have this section about health topics. So this consists of a lot of topics that are the focus of World Health Organization. So for example, here there's this gender and health. This is the overview, so what they're focusing on. And if you scroll down through the article, you can find informations about it, like news about it, updates about it, the roles of WHO about it. So there are a lot of things that you can make a topic of out of this article. And yeah, this is more about well-defined topic. So which one do you think is better? Is it 1 or 2? So if you can please write in the chat box about. So the first one is, what are the different treatments option for Angelman syndrome? And the second one is, does gene therapy have the potential to improve the clinical outcomes of Angelman syndrome? So I actually made a literature review about this, and it was published, I think, back in 2019. So yeah. So which one do you think is better? Is it 1 or 2? Yeah. Thank you for the answers. So the second one is better. Of course, you can still write literature review with the first one, but it will be very broad. And in literature review, we want to scrutinize on a certain topic. So we don't want to only summarize it. We also want to critically analyze it. And if we make the topic be more specific, but not too specific either, we can focus on a lot of different aspects of the field. So for example, gene therapy, aside of the medical aspect of it, there's also ethical aspect that needs to be considered. If you know that, I think back in 2018, there was a case about gene therapy being done in an unborn fetus, and it causes a huge controversy. So gene therapy and ethical considerations should always go hand in hand in an article, especially a literature review article. And another thing to consider about gene therapy is the economical aspect about it. Is it feasible to be conducted not only in developed countries, but also in developing countries, something like that. So I think I've actually seen some reviews that focuses on the first question, but this is usually more reserved for writing book chapters, because in book chapters, well, it needs to be broad because we are learning like a broad thing, a broad topic in that. But in literature review, in order to be able to discuss about different aspects of it, it is better to have a well-defined one, a more focused and specific one. And by writing not only about the medical or pharmaceutical aspects about it, but also, for example, the ethical, legal, and economical implications, we can cater to a lot of individuals, not only medical researchers, medical doctors, but also, for example, lawyers and well, health economists, something like that. Once again, what we want from literature review and research in general is for people to read it as well, in order to reach more people and hence advocate a topic better. And for that, we need to cater to a large audience. And one of ways doing so is to write a comprehensive article about a certain topic. And the next part of here, you define a topic Oh, there's a question about Angelman syndrome. Angelman syndrome is basically a neurological disorder. It's related to genetics, and it's somehow like a congenital diseases, if I'm not remembering it incorrectly. So I can show you the article in the last part of the presentation, but for now, I think I will continue to the second step, that is choosing the type of the literature review. So after you know your topic, after you know the definition of literature review, the next important step is to know the types, because there are a lot of types. The first one is narrative literature review. It's basically just like a summary. Well, what makes all of this differ is mainly the methods. So in narrative literature review, you are not compulsory to write your method, like your method in searching or how you extract the data is not compulsory to write about it. So the narrative literature review is more flexible in terms of it, but at the same time, it can also cause bias. So the other review written here is has higher level of evidence compared to narrative literature review, but narrative is still important because, well, it can once again still show the summary and analysis of a topic. And there are two types of narrative literature review. This one is based on the length of it. Mini review is usually about 2,000 words long, and it has a minimum of 80 references, while the full length one is usually above 400 words, I think, and it has a minimum of 100 references. So yeah, you basically need to read a minimum of 80 references in order to write a review. But if you want to go for a full length one, you need to go for more than that. A full length review article I know once had more than 200 articles cited from what I remember. Yeah, so the next one is scoping review. So scoping review is a relatively new type of literature review. It's basically aimed to show the number of literature about a topic. So if the topic is very new, sometimes it's unclear how many articles are there in their search databases and in Google yet. So that's where a scoping review comes in. So the content of it is usually, well, about the topic. There are, for example, 10 articles that are about it. Yeah, and then they will explain a bit about the topic, but not truly in depth. And then the next type is systematic literature review. So it's very similar to narrative literature review, but it has methods in it. And well, the methods need to follow a certain rule, and I will explain more about it in the next part. But basically, you need to show your keywords. What keywords did you use to search for articles? How did you extract the data? What are the job division between you and your researchers team, etc. And lastly, there's systematic literature review and meta-analysis. So meta-analysis is basically a statistical analysis of the literature review. So for original research, I think that was explained in the previous week. In original research, we do analysis of the data we got from data collecting to the participants. For example, if we're making a questionnaire, a cross-sectional article with a cross-sectional research with a questionnaire, then what we do after we got data from the questionnaire is that we continue to the data analysis, for example, by using SPSS or other statistical applications. The same thing can also be applied to literature review, but it needs to be systematic literature review, because Well, of course, in narrative literature review, the methods is not clearly shown. So in order to do meta-analysis, the methods should be clear. And then the concept is basically similar to the original research counterpart. It's just that the data is obtained through a second source. So for example, about the gene therapy for Angelman syndrome, there are some articles that explain about the efficiency of the gene therapy. And then what we can do if it can be, if the method is clear, then we can make a meta-analysis out of it. Basically, it's summarize the efficiency of the gene therapy. So for example, out of the articles that are in the internet, there are 4 articles that can be included in the study. Then the efficiency of the gene therapy from the 4 articles should then further be summarized with meta-analysis that is usually using another application. So if SPSS is used to analyze data for original researches, or well, if you can also use R or other types of statistical applications. For meta-analysis, the applications that is usually used is the reference manager, or REFMAN. So it's from Cochrane. I think if you're interested, you can learn more about it. But in this presentation, we're going to focus first on the narrative literature review and systematic literature review without going to the meta-analysis part, because well, the statistical analysis is quite complex. So if you're interested to learn more, I think you can search about it, or you can contact me after this presentation. And so after you choose the type of the review article, the next part is to search for articles. And in searching for articles, there are a few steps that you need to be that need to be done.